All right, in this last video, I just want to give you some sense of the history of object-oriented programming. We're going to have our last reading module on the history of programming languages in general, but really Simula was kind of the first language that introduced something that looked like data abstraction. Smalltalk is really the language that's kind of credited with being the first sort of object-oriented language where you had objects and you could send messages between them. C++ kind of started as a wrapper around C, so it was literally a preprocessor that took C++ code and turned it into C code. Java and or Java and C Sharp are kind of languages that were designed around being C++. Having the object-oriented features that C++ had, but simplifying them or making their features more unified or easier to use. And then we talked about Ruby, which is interesting in being a pure object-oriented language. Everything is an object. There are no native data types. But most languages now have some form of object-oriented programming. So the support for abstract data types and inheritance and dynamic binding and dynamic dispatch. So I'm not going to talk too much about these last slides. But you can do abstraction in C. It doesn't require objects. You can use structs. You can use void star pointers for polymorphism. You can actually do object-oriented programming in C, but it is fairly cumbersome and error-prone. So obviously C++ adds true object-oriented support with classes and methods and separating things into the header file and implementation file, which you did in C as well, but now you can organize your files by the classes. And then there is obviously abstraction in Java, and so it's interesting to kind of compare the two. And again, I'm not going to go through and read all these things, but you can look at all of this in your textbook. We also studied Ruby, and so I also wanted to just put this up here. So this is a nice table that's in your textbook about the comparison between different object-oriented languages. And so it's worth sitting down and studying this a little bit just to see how different languages approach data abstraction and object-oriented programming and the notion of abstract data types in different ways.